There's a strange pattern that quietly follows a lot of intelligent people through life. They think deeply. They notice details others ignore. They analyze situations from multiple angles. They question consequences, possibilities, risks, outcomes, and hidden variables before making decisions. From the outside, this often looks like self-awareness, maturity, or intelligence. And sometimes it is. But there's another side to it that people rarely talk about. Because over time, thinking can slowly become a substitute for movement. The mind becomes so focused on understanding every possibility that it struggles to fully commit to any of them. Decisions begin feeling heavier than they actually are. Small uncertainties start expanding into mental obstacles. And slowly, a person begins spending more time evaluating life than actually participating in it. Not because they lack potential, not because they lack ideas, but because their mind keeps turning every decision into an endless mental process. And eventually, they become people who may have a brilliant way of thinking, but still end up defeated by life itself. Today, we're going to explore how overthinking slowly disconnects people from action, instinct, and real involvement with life. Welcome back to the glitch cult, where awareness stops feeling empowering and starts exposing what's quietly holding you back. Overthinkers often struggle with something that most people around them cannot immediately see. From the outside, it may simply look like hesitation, inconsistency, or lack of execution. People usually assume that overthinkers fail to move because they are afraid, distracted, or unmotivated. But in reality, the process happening inside their mind is far more complicated than simple hesitation. The problem is not that they think. The problem is the way they relate to uncertainty. Most people can make decisions while accepting that some level of unpredictability will always exist. They understand that outcomes cannot be fully controlled, and because of that, they slowly adapt while moving forward. But overthinkers often approach decisions differently. Before committing to something, they try to mentally examine every possible consequence in advance. They attempt to calculate risks, predict emotional outcomes, estimate future regret, measure long-term value, compare alternative paths, and determine whether the decision will truly justify the energy and sacrifice required. And because the mind keeps expanding the number of variables involved, even simple decisions begin feeling psychologically exhausting. This creates a pattern where overthinkers rarely experience decisions as straightforward. Almost every choice becomes layered with invisible mental pressure. Choosing one direction no longer feels like simply moving forward. Instead, it begins feeling like closing off every other possibility. The brain keeps reminding them of alternative outcomes, alternative lifestyles, alternative careers, alternative futures. And because of that, commitment itself starts feeling dangerous. This is why many overthinkers constantly reopen decisions after already making them. Even after choosing something, their mind continues revisiting the decision repeatedly. Was this actually the smartest option? What if another path would have worked better? What if I regret this later? What if I'm wasting time? What if this effort leads nowhere? And because these questions never fully stop, consistency becomes extremely difficult. The issue is not always lack of ambition. In many cases, overthinkers are highly ambitious people. They often have strong ideas, creative thinking, and deep awareness about life. But awareness alone does not automatically create movement. In fact, when awareness becomes excessive, it can start interrupting movement completely. Because while other people may simply begin and adapt later, overthinkers often feel the need to emotionally resolve uncertainty before they fully commit themselves. And that creates a dangerous cycle. The more they think, the more perspectives they discover. The more perspectives they discover, the harder commitment becomes. And the harder commitment becomes, the more mentally exhausting every path starts feeling. Eventually, this creates a person who feels constantly mentally active, but rarely mentally settled. A large amount of energy gets consumed internally without anything substantial being built externally. Days become filled with consideration instead of execution. Research replaces experimentation. Analysis replaces repetition. Reflection replaces involvement. And over time, this slowly damages a person's relationship with action itself, because action begins feeling emotionally expensive, not physically difficult, emotionally difficult. Every decision starts carrying invisible psychological weight. Even starting small tasks can feel mentally draining because the brain is no longer interacting with the task alone. It is interacting with imagined future consequences attached to the task. And this is where overthinking becomes deeply destructive. Not because thinking is bad, but because excessive analysis slowly disconnects people from direct engagement with life, instead of experiencing reality and adapting through it. They remain trapped trying to mentally perfect their relationship with uncertainty first. But uncertainty is not something life allows people to fully eliminate, which means many overthinkers unknowingly spend years waiting for a level of internal certainty that never actually arrives. And during that time, life continues moving. Opportunities begin to slip away. Skills that could have been developed remain untouched. Confidence slowly starts to weaken. Over time, you stop trusting your own ability to follow through. And eventually, the momentum that could have changed your life disappears completely. And slowly, many overthinkers become people who know how to analyze life deeply, but no longer know how to fully participate in it. One of the biggest consequences of overthinking is something most people do not notice immediately. Over time, excessive analysis slowly changes the way a person relates to themselves. Not just their decisions, but their own instincts, emotions, reactions, and sense of direction. The more someone overthinks, the harder it becomes for them to trust themselves naturally. At first, this process feels harmless. A person may simply believe they are being careful, analytical, or self-aware. They may think they are making smarter decisions by examining everything deeply before acting. But gradually, this constant need to mentally process every possibility begins interrupting direct experience itself, instead of naturally responding to life. Overthinkers begin filtering almost everything through analysis first. A simple conversation becomes, what did they mean by that? Did I say something wrong? Was that awkward? Should I have responded differently? A new opportunity becomes, what if this goes nowhere? What if I choose wrong? What if another option is better? What if I regret investing my time into this? Even emotions themselves begin getting analyzed instead of experienced. Rather than simply feeling sadness, excitement, uncertainty, attraction, motivation, or curiosity, the mind immediately starts dissecting the emotion. Why do I feel this? Is this the right feeling? Am I overreacting? Is this emotion even valid? And over time, this creates a person who becomes mentally separated from their own natural instincts. This is important because instincts are not random. A large part of human decision-making depends on accumulated emotional understanding, lived experience, intuition, adaptation, and direct interaction with reality. But overthinkers slowly stop trusting those natural internal signals because every instinct immediately gets interrupted by analysis. The mind no longer allows movement to feel simple. Everything becomes layered with mental commentary. And eventually, this creates a strange form of self-disconnection, where a person is constantly observing themselves while living, instead of fully participating in the moment itself. They begin monitoring how they appear, how they sound, whether they're making the correct choice, whether they're behaving properly, whether their emotions make sense. This level of constant internal observation creates exhaustion that other people usually cannot see. Because overthinkers are not only living life, they are simultaneously analyzing themselves while living it. And this gradually weakens confidence in a very specific way. Not loud insecurity, quiet hesitation, the kind where a person slowly stops trusting their first instinct, stops trusting their own judgment, stops trusting emotional clarity, stops trusting decisions unless they have mentally reviewed them from every possible angle first. But life rarely gives that level of certainty. Many important parts of life require movement before complete clarity appears. Relationships, creativity, career choices, personal growth, opportunities, and change. And because overthinkers often wait until they feel mentally certain before fully acting, they can become trapped in endless internal processing while reality continues moving around them. This is why many overthinkers consume enormous amounts of information but still feel directionless. They keep searching for the perfect perspective, the perfect explanation, the perfect system, the perfect answer that will finally make them feel fully ready to move. But too much analysis often produces the opposite effect. Instead of creating clarity, it creates more perspectives, more comparisons, more possibilities, and more doubt. And eventually, the brain loses its ability to move naturally because every action now feels like something that must be mentally justified first. This is where overthinking slowly transforms from intelligence into self-interruption. Because the problem is no longer lack of awareness. The problem becomes an inability to stop analyzing long enough to directly experience life again. And slowly, many overthinkers become people who are deeply connected to thought, but disconnected from instinct, spontaneity, momentum, and real involvement with the world around them.